I'm back in this live stream. We're going to talk about trim work. We're going to go over your basic materials, the tools you're going to need, and the sequence of construction. This is going to be quick and dirty just to get something out there so you guys have something because we've gone through kind of the phases of construction. We've done drywall, we've done paint, we've done floor. Now we're at the trim work phase. And I will always include doors in the trim work. So we're going to have your doors, trim work, baseboard, casing, any other things you're going to put in. But your kind of very simple install is usually you're going to have your doors put in, your casing around the doors and windows, and then your baseboards. Now, the materials you're going to use, the best one you're going to use is MDF. Now, is it the best to work with? No, it's kind of gross. What it is it's going to fit inside your budget. It's going to have all the profiles you want, and it's going to be a lot cheaper than getting pine or poplar or whatever it is you're looking for. I used to use, and a lot of builders in our area used, 4-inch colonial primed finger jointed pine. I was at the hardware store the other day, an 8-foot piece of primed finger jointed pine baseboard, 4-inch colonial, $27. That is more than $3 a square foot. Now, if you're buying by the linear foot, they come in 16-foot pieces. You're going to get a little bit better price. Not much. Like that is a lot. That is a lot more than it used to be. So MDF is going to be the more budget friendly. I have trouble with it sometimes because MDF is very thirsty when you go to glue your joints together. It will take a lot more glue because it sucks a lot of it up. The blowouts from the nails take a lot more treatment if you're going to be using that. You're filling the holes with your putty, whether it's your DAP, the pink compound, or you're using the caulking. When you're coping it, I like to cope my corners because my walls aren't always straight, and I can always use coping to minimize the gaps of my walls, anything coming up. You're going to have a little more work there because it kind of breaks a little more easily. So MDF is the best because it's the cheapest. That is the only reason. It is not good to me for any other reason than it's cheap. The finish, it can look pretty good. A lot of the times, most people don't know. A lot of times, I don't know because if you use the right quality paint and it's installed properly, you're not going to notice. I don't use it in bathrooms because MDF sucks up water, and I have little kids. And if your kid starts splashing around, the water gets outside the tub and just gets onto the baseboard, and it just swells, and you end up replacing it. Or I just leave it until they're older and they stop destroying things, which will be never. Tools. Tools are pretty straightforward. You're going to need a chop saw and a table saw. Those are your two big ones. If you don't own them, you can rent them. You can buy used ones. There's a lot of options. I try to set up when I'm doing it in my basement. I bought a chop saw hood to limit the dust. And it just mounts right onto your chop saw stand in the two little holes in the back. You can find it on the internet. If you just put in chop saw hood, it'll come up, and you're looking like $200. And then that way you're cutting inside the house. It's not causing a big deal, and you can keep going as opposed to having to station your saw outside, go out and cut, come back in. That extends the time you have to do baseboard by a lot. I liken it to going up a ladder. Anytime you're going up a ladder, doubling or tripling the time you're spending. It just adds so much. So going up and down the stairs is going to add a lot of time. All depends on what you're trying to get accomplished in what time span. Like I mentioned, table saw, you're going to have a nail gun. That's what you're going to be putting it in with. Your speed square, your measuring tape. I have a pass load cordless nail gun in a basement. I find it great because I'm not trailing around a hose. But if you have a compressor and a nail gun, it's great. No big deal, right? You use what you got. You can rent a lot of these at Home Depot or your local tool rental center. They're not crazy to operate. They don't require a lot of understanding. Your chop saw blade, you're going to go with probably a little finer blade because you're going to want the results of your cuts to be perfect. You're going to have your little Alpha knife. Maybe you have a block planer to go with it because when you're mitering your casing, If the walls aren't perfect, you might have to shave the inside of the casing to get it to butt together. That usually happens along the way, right? Because your walls aren't always going to be square or straight or proper. Maybe you didn't frame all of them. Maybe they were already framed. Maybe the utility room area was framed and it's all crooked or under the stairs, all of that. Now that we've got our tools sorted out, we're going to go with the sequence. Doors go first. Now, doors to me are the measure of a carpenter. They are not easy to put in. They are the only thing in your basement that is going to function repeatedly. You're going to go in and out of rooms, you're going to open and close those doors. So it has to be secured properly so that it doesn't wobble. And then, because over time it's going to kind of move, right? So you want to lock that in. I personally am not a huge fan of pre-hung doors, but I don't hate them. And the reason I don't like them is two things. One, the enamel painting on it in transport often for me would get chipped. And maybe that's because I'm careless, but it'd get chipped and it's harder to repair than just your regular stuff, right? It has a different coating. I know you're going to paint it, but it's a lot of work. You're patching it, repairing it, maybe we're using wood filler, you're sanding it, buffing it. It can sometimes not look the same. I also tend to fixate on these little mistakes. And every time I walk by it, I just look at that one thing. The other thing I don't like about them, or I find challenging with them, is your floor will not always be level. So your jambs, when they come down, need to be shaved accordingly. You're going to have one shaved a little bit lower or a little bit taller than the other so that your door sits properly in the opening and functions. Your number one issue with doors is installing them for function. They need to be plumb, square, otherwise they don't work. And function is what matters. If you do not install them properly, it will be problematic over time. You want to be sure that if you framed it, that your opening is framed properly. Your walls may be out. Do not automatically assume that it's perfectly framed and your drywall's on and you just hang the door and it's flush to the drywall and it's perfect. It's not. Make sure that what you're doing is the right way to do it. You want the door to be plumb, even if the wall is a little wonky. Okay. That is something that takes experience. So don't beat yourself up if you don't get it right away. You're going to use the nail gun. I personally will countersink screws into the jambs, screw them in, and then that allows me to play with it a little bit in the space. I'm going to do the hinge side first, and then I'm going to work my way over around the opening, all the while making sure that my door is level, right? My floor, don't automatically assume your floor is level like your walls. Do not automatically assume they are plumb. Your opening needs to be verified before you go ahead. So I'll use a laser and a 4-foot level for those and go from there. I'll put the screws in, get my door going, and then I'll shim it up from there. And I'll start by shimming up the hinge side. I will put some shims in the top jamb between the header and the door, just so that it doesn't rattle. I know you're going to nail in the trim. The trim's going to get nailed into the wall, and it's all going to be one system. Adding a shim or two up top to keep it from rattling makes a difference in the long run because you're going to notice it, especially if you do it. You're going to be very critical of your own stuff. Once your doors are in, you're going to do the door casing. If you have openings, you're going to cap those openings in jam material and you're going to case them. And the reason you're doing casing first is because your baseboard butts into it. If you do all the baseboard first, you're eventually going to end up at a doorway and you're going to have to do the casing. So you may as well do the sequence first, doors, casing. If you're doing the casing and you have windows, you're going to have to build up the jams. Often basement windows do not have jam returns. So in your main floor window, there's a little vinyl sleeve that the window jam material goes into. When you're going to the hardware store, you want to ask for window jam material. It comes in 1x3, 1x4, 1x6, 1x8. It's not cheap. Don't want to lie to you. So you're going to use that. When I don't have a return around my windows in the basement, if you're really good, you can just scribe it to fit and slide it right in. If you're a little bit of a hack like me sometimes, I will use doorstop around it, right? Because the window will go and you can either prefab build the window buck and slide it in or window jambs, or you can go piece by piece, however you want to do it. Remarkable Woodworks on YouTube, on Instagram. His Instagram's way bigger. He's got a bunch of great stuff on it. So I would advise you to go look at some of his stuff. Shout out to Mark. Then once you've done that, you're going to do your baseboards. You're going to nail them in. I will advise you, and I think I talked about this in the painting section. Please paint one coat everything before you put it on. It will make your life so much better because then once it's on, you're just filling the holes and painting over. And spend the money for the good paint for it. Okay, you're going to use the high end semi gloss, so it's going to give you a better sheen, a better result, and you won't be looking at it saying, "Oh, it's not that great." Now, that's if you have the budget. I don't want if you don't have the money to spend, don't spend it. I'm not saying you have to do it. There's no shade that if you can't be the best of the best of the best, done is done. And I'm a big advocate for that. Those are the things you're going to look at. Those are the things you do for trim. One other thing I will add is going down the stairs. You're going to have your stringers going down, right? And sometimes between the drywall and the top of the stringer, you're going to have a gap. You can use different types of door stop there, running them along the top and down, and then your baseboard butts into that. When you're mitering your outside corners, if you're going to cope your inside corners, think about the angles. There is a school of thought that you make your outside angles 46 degrees, and then you can kind of dap it all and make it look beautiful. You're not going to want to beat yourself up too much on this. Baseboard is the one, as you get to the end, where you're feeling like, oh, it's almost done. And then you finish it, the baseboard goes on, and you're just like, oh, we made it. That is kind of the last one. You want to be sure that if you are getting ready to do your baseboard and there is a bathroom or you have cabinetry, the cabinetry kind of needs to go in first. It's not a big deal if you have some cabinets. You can just kind of run your baseboard pieces wild and just temporarily tack them in until the cabinets come, and then you just pull them off and you put the cabinets in. And then re-nail your baseboards. Yeah, it sucks because you got to pull the tools out again, but so be it. Another school of thought, another thing I learned would be once your floors are down, would be to cover certain areas in ram board. It's a floor protector. You're going to be walking around. There's going to be a lot of dust from the chop saw. Even if you have the hood on, just walking around, you're stepping on things. Your tools are laying around. The ram board just helps you protect that wonderful new floor that you just put down on your hands and knees, which your back is probably still sore from getting scratched. That's it for now. I'm working on something to do with drywall. I'm drywalling a room in my basement. I put the drywall up. I did not film that because that's too much of a pain in the butt, and I did it over a series of days. I'm going to do something on the taping series, the sequence, right? The first thing is pre-fill, and that's what I'm going to be working on today and tomorrow. So, all that being said, I appreciate all of you for watching, and good luck on your project.